New Bedford highway killer. Between March 1988 and April 1989, 9 women were found deceased in southeastern Massachusetts, with 2 additional women who vanished and are presumed to have met the same fate. All of the victims were connected to the street scene in the Weld Square area of New Bedford, making them vulnerable targets who often went unnoticed when they first disappeared. The bodies were discovered along 3 major highways: Route 140, Interstate 195, and Route 88, within a 20-mile radius of New Bedford. This wasn't random dumping. The locations showed someone with intimate knowledge of the area's remote wooded spots, places where bodies might not be discovered for weeks or months. The victims were positioned on their backs, with feet toward the highway. Many had been strangled with their own clothing. Bras wrapped around their necks became the perpetrator's signature. This consistency across multiple scenes told investigators they were dealing with a serial offender who had a specific method. The confirmed victims included Deborah Medeiros, last seen May 27, 1988, and found July 3 on Route 140 in Freetown. Nancy Lee Paiva vanished July 7th and was discovered July 30th on I-195 in Dartmouth. Dawn Mendez disappeared September 4th and was found November 29th. The pattern continued through April 1989, when Sandra Botello's body was discovered, the last victim found. Cristina Montero and Marilyn Cardoza Roberts are missing and presumed deceased, though their bodies have never been recovered. Their disappearances fit the timeline and victim profile perfectly. The investigation focused on 2 primary suspects whose names would become forever linked to this case. Kenneth Ponte, a New Bedford attorney, had personal connections to multiple victims that seemed too significant to ignore. He had previously dated victim Robin Rhodes. He represented Mary Tiwa, Rosa Santos, and Rochelle Dopiorala in legal matters. He even helped Santos's husband make missing person flyers when she vanished. In August 1990, Ponte was indicted for Dopiorala's ending. This was it. After years of investigation, they finally had someone in custody. But in July 1991, charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. The case against him simply couldn't be proven beyond reasonable doubt. Ponte died in January 2010, taking whatever he knew to his grave. The second suspect was Anthony DeGrazia, known as Flatnose to local street workers. In May 1989, he was charged with 17 separate incidents involving force against women in the area. The pattern of his known behavior matched what investigators believed about the highway perpetrator. But DeGrazia never faced trial for the highway cases. He passed away in July 1990 under suspicious circumstances. The coroner initially ruled it a homicide. DA's office later classified it as self-inflicted. The truth about how he ended up deceased remains murky, and so does his potential connection to the highway cases. What could finally crack this case wide open after more than 3 decades? In December 2025, the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court began deciding whether to test DNA from the 1988 ending of Mary Harris, a street worker strangled in a Dartmouth motel room. Families of highway killer victims filed briefs supporting the testing, calling this potentially their last good chance to find new physical evidence. The case remains active with the Massachusetts State Police Cold Case Unit under Lieutenant Anne Marie Robertson. The unit continues reviewing evidence and following any leads that emerge. The DNA testing decision could provide the breakthrough that's eluded investigators for 37 years. The challenge with this case has always been the era in which it occurred. Events happened in the late 1980s, before modern DNA testing became routine in criminal investigations. Evidence was collected using the best techniques available at the time, but much of it has degraded significantly over the decades. The victims' vulnerable positions in society meant their disappearances often weren't reported immediately, giving the perpetrator time to evade detection. Someone knows what happened along those Massachusetts highways. Whether it was Ponte, DeGrazia, or someone else entirely, the truth is out there waiting to be uncovered. The families of 11 women, 9 confirmed deceased and 2 still missing, deserve answers after nearly 4 decades of waiting. While that case involves multiple victims over time, the next mystery centers on a single man who went to extraordinary lengths to erase every trace of who he was. Peter Bergman. On June 12, 2009, a man using the name Peter Bergman arrived at Sligo's bus station from Derry, Northern Ireland. He checked into the Sligo City Hotel, paying with cash and providing what turned out to be a completely fictitious Austrian address. The address he gave was Einstettersinn 15 4472, Vienna. But the street doesn't exist anywhere in Austria. And Vienna postcodes begin with 1, not 4. This was the first sign that nothing about this man was what it appeared to be. Physical description from hotel staff and CCTV footage showed a man in his late 50s to early 60s, 5 feet 10 inches tall with a slim build, short gray hair and blue eyes. He had a tan complexion and spoke with a thick German or Austrian accent. He wore glasses and was a heavy smoker. Everything about his appearance suggested a European professional, perhaps a businessman or academic. But his behavior over the next 3 days was anything but ordinary. Over those 72 hours, he was captured on CCTV, leaving his hotel 13 times, carrying a full purple plastic bag. Each time he returned, the bag was either empty or folded. He was disposing of something methodically, trip after trip. He purchased 8 to 10 international postage stamps at the post office, but was never seen actually mailing anything anywhere. What letters did he write? To whom? And what happened to them? Police searched rubbish bins throughout Sligo, checked the local dump, examined gardens and car parks. They found absolutely nothing he'd discarded. He seemed to know exactly where the surveillance cameras were positioned and actively avoided them while disposing of items. This level of awareness suggested planning, preparation, and a clear goal: to leave no trace of his real identity behind. On June 14th, he took a taxi to Ross's Point Beach for what appeared to be reconnaissance. He was scouting the location, getting familiar with it. On June 15th, he checked out of the hotel and boarded a bus back to Ross's Point. At 11:50 p.m., a local resident saw him on the beach. The next morning, at approximately 6:45 a.m., his body was discovered on Ross's Point Beach by a father and son who were training for a triathlon. They saw what they thought was a person sleeping on the sand and went to check, only to discover he was deceased. The autopsy revealed acute cardiac arrest as the cause. No drowning, no foul play, no signs of a struggle. His heart simply stopped. But the medical findings raised more questions than answers. He had advanced prostate malignancy with bone tumors, evidence of previous heart attacks, and only 1 kidney. These were conditions that would cause significant ongoing discomfort. Yet there was no medication in his system whatsoever. A man in his condition should have been taking multiple prescriptions just to manage daily existence. His clothing had all labels meticulously removed, every single tag, every brand marking, everything that might identify where the items were purchased. His shoes were German-made Finn Comfort brand from 2002. A small bar of unwrapped soap appeared to be of German manufacture. These tiny details suggested he was indeed European, likely German or Austrian, but nothing more. Why would someone go to such extraordinary lengths to hide their identity before passing away? The investigation hit walls at every turn. No Peter Bergman matching his description exists in any database. No missing persons report matches him anywhere in Europe. His DNA is retained by Sligo Gardaí, but without a country claiming him as a missing person, there's no Interpol notice issued. He was buried in an unmarked grave in Sligo Cemetery on September 18, 2009. The service was attended only by 4 police officers, an undertaker, and a gravedigger. No family, no friends, no one who knew his real name. UK charity, Locate International launched a renewed appeal in 2023 with new forensic imaging techniques and exclusive CCTV footage that hadn't been previously released to the public. The hope was that someone, somewhere, would recognize him from these enhanced images. Detective Mulderig stated the case remains in sleep mode, awaiting the identification that may never come. Sleep mode doesn't mean closed. It means waiting for that one piece of information that could unlock everything. Theories abound. Was he a spy disposing of classified materials? A person with a terminal diagnosis who wanted to pass away anonymously, away from family? Someone escaping a dark past? A witness protection participant who wanted to truly disappear? Each theory has merit. Each has problems. The man who called himself Peter Bergman took his real identity to an unmarked grave in Ireland, leaving behind only questions and a purple plastic bag that held secrets we'll likely never know. While this man erased himself, deliberately, the next case involves victims who were taken from what should have been the safest place imaginable. Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. On the night before the official start of summer camp in 1977, 3 Girl Scouts were found deceased at Camp Scott in Locust Grove, Oklahoma. Lori Lee Farmer, Michelle Heather Goose, and Doris Denise Milner, all from the Tulsa area, had their lives taken in a way that would haunt Oklahoma forever. Approximately 140 young Girl Scouts had arrived at the 410-acre camp the day before. The 3 victims were assigned to tent number 7 in the Kiowa unit. This tent was positioned 86 yards from the nearest counselors, the furthest tent from adult supervision, and partially hidden behind the camp showers. At approximately 2:30 a.m., camp counselor Carla Wilhite heard strange guttural sounds in the darkness outside. She investigated, but found nothing amiss and returned to her tent. At 6 a.m., another counselor walking toward the showers discovered something that would change everything. A body was visible in a sleeping bag approximately 150 yards from tent 7. 2 bodies were stuffed together inside a single sleeping bag. One was lying outside it. All 3 had been harmed and taken from the camp. Evidence at the scene included a large red flashlight on top of the bodies with a smudged fingerprint, a size 9.5 shoe footprint in blood inside the tent, and biological samples. The forensic evidence was there. But would it be enough to identify who did this? What made this case even more disturbing was a warning that had been ignored. Less than 2 months earlier, during counselor training, a note was discovered in a ransacked belongings area. The note read, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in tent 1. The camp director dismissed it as a prank from bored teenagers. Parents were never informed. No additional security measures were implemented. When 3 victims were indeed found deceased, not in tent 1, but the number was exact, the note took on horrifying significance. Gene Leroy Hart became the prime suspect. He was a Cherokee Nation member who had been raised just 1 mile from Camp Scott. He was already serving a 308-year sentence for taking 2 pregnant women when he escaped from Mays County Jail in 1973. Hart had used similar methods in his known offenses: nylon rope, duct tape, and making guttural noises during attacks. Those guttural sounds matched exactly what Counselor Wilhite had heard in the darkness. The connection seemed clear. Oklahoma's largest manhunt ended on April 6, 1978, when Hart was captured at a Cherokee medicine man's shack where he'd been hiding. Finally, authorities had their suspect in custody. The trial would bring justice for 3 families who'd been waiting for answers. At trial in March 1979, Hart was acquitted. The jury stated the prosecution failed to prove guilt beyond reasonable doubt. Not that they believed he was innocent, but that the evidence wasn't strong enough for conviction. There's a critical difference between those two positions. On June 4, 1979, just 2 months after his acquittal, Hart passed away of a heart attack at 35 years old while exercising in prison on his other convictions. He was gone before any additional evidence could be developed or tested. But the case didn't end there. DNA testing has evolved dramatically since 1979. In 1989, 3 of 5 DNA probes matched Hart. But the results were deemed statistically inconclusive. The technology wasn't advanced enough yet. In 2008, samples were tested again, but had deteriorated significantly over 3 decades. A partial female DNA profile raised disturbing questions about whether someone else might have been involved, possibly a female accomplice. Then came 2022. Advanced DNA testing strongly suggests Hart's involvement and eliminated all other suspects ever considered by investigators. Sheriff Mike Reed stated, "All the DNA from the scene matched the 3 victims and Hart. So why does this remain listed as unsolved? Because Hart was acquitted in court. You cannot be tried twice for the same offense under double jeopardy protections. Even if the DNA now strongly points to him, he can never be convicted because he was found not guilty in 1979, and he's been deceased for over 40 years. Following the McGirt versus Oklahoma Supreme Court ruling in 2020, the Cherokee Nation Marshal Service assigned an investigator to the case because one victim had Native American ancestry. This added another layer of jurisdiction and investigation to a case already decades old. Alternative theories persist. In 2011, filmmaker John Russell claimed convicted person Carl Lee Myers confessed to him personally about the camp events. But Myers was never charged. Confession has never been independently verified. While that tragedy occurred at what should have been a safe summer camp, the next case involves 2 sisters who simply wanted to see their favorite movie one more time. Grimes sisters. The victims were Barbara Jean Grimes and Patricia Kathleen Grimes, 2 sisters from Chicago who shared an obsession with Elvis Presley. Barbara was 15, a Thomas Kelly High School sophomore known for being the serious sister with a dazzling smile. Patricia, nicknamed Petey, was 12, a St. Maurice's Catholic school 7th grader who was high-spirited and outgoing. Both had joined Elvis's official fan club and plastered their bedroom walls with his pictures. They were 2 of 7 offspring from a divorced but amicable family living at 3634 South Damon Avenue in Chicago's McKinley Park neighborhood. On December 28, 1956, the sisters left home at approximately 7:15 to 7:30 p.m. to see Elvis Presley's film debut, Love Me Tender, at the Brighton Theater. This was their 11th viewing of the movie. They had $2.50 total and promised to return by midnight. At intermission around 9:30 p.m., a school friend saw them buying popcorn at the concession stand. They were happy, excited, behaving like normal teenagers, enjoying their favorite star. Multiple witnesses, including a bus driver, reported seeing the girls board a CTA bus around 11:05 p.m., heading east on Archer Avenue toward home. They allegedly exited the bus at Western Avenue, approximately halfway to their house, for unknown reasons. Why would they get off early? Did they see someone they knew? Did someone convince them to exit? Two teenage boys claimed to see the sisters around 11:30 p.m. near their home, giggling and jumping out of doorways at each other, as if playing a game. If this sighting was accurate, the girls were almost home and safe. But they never walked through their front door. The search was massive. Over 300,000 people were questioned. 2,000 individuals underwent serious interrogation, and 15,000 flyers were distributed throughout Chicago, surrounding areas. False sightings poured in from locations as far as Nashville, Tennessee. On January 19, 1957, Elvis Presley himself issued a televised plea from Graceland. "If you are good Presley fans, you'll go home and ease your mother's worries." He was reportedly so shaken by what happened that he later said if he'd known the movie would lead to this, he never would have made it. On January 22, 1957, following a rapid thaw, construction worker Leonard Prescott spotted flesh-colored things behind a guardrail on German Church Road in unincorporated Willow Springs. The bodies lay behind the guardrail, appearing posed and remarkably clean despite being outdoors for weeks. Barbara had 3 puncture wounds on her chest. Patricia had numerous facial bruises. No clothing was ever recovered. The autopsy became a source of bitter controversy. Official cause was listed as murder, secondary shock from exposure to the elements. Pathologists concluded both likely passed away within 5 hours of their last confirmed sighting on December 28th. But Chief Investigator Harry Gloss violently disagreed. He argued the girls had been held captive for days based on ice formation on the bodies and curdled milk in Barbara's stomach. She hadn't consumed milk at home or the theater that evening. Gloss was fired in February 1957. He called it politically motivated, claiming officials wanted the case closed regardless of the truth. Edward Lee "Benny" Bedwell, a 21-year-old drifter who strongly resembled Elvis Presley, became the primary suspect. He signed a 14-page confession stating he and another man spent a week with the girls before causing their demise on January 13th. The confession was detailed and convinced many investigators they had their man. But his ironclad work time card proved he was clocked in from 4:19 p.m. December 28th to 12:30 a.m. December 29th, covering the entire window when the girls vanished. He couldn't have taken them if he was at work. Charges were dropped in March 1957. Kenneth Hansen, convicted of ending 3 Chicago boys in 1955. The Schuessler-Peterson case, with strikingly similar circumstances, was later connected to the Grimes investigation. Evidence uncovered by WGN-TV showed Hansen was at the Brighton Theater the same night as the Grimes sisters, and their bodies were found on property he leased for horses. But the original biological sample has been lost, making DNA comparison impossible. Hansen passed away in prison in 2007, never charged with the Grimes case. Retired investigator Raymond Johnson has proposed exhuming the sisters to recover DNA from fingernails that might still preserve genetic material from their attacker. The Cook County Sheriff's Police stated exhumations are done rarely and would require everything in place to collect the best possible evidence. The case remains Chicago's most infamous unsolved mystery nearly 70 years later. While those sisters vanished after a movie, the next victim was walking home from a party when someone took everything from her. Lisa Hessian. Lisa Jane Hessian was a 14-year-old from Lee, Greater Manchester, England. She was an only offspring, popular at school, academically achieving, with talents in athletics and gymnastics. She was a massive David Bowie fan, whose favorite song was "You Really Got Me" by the Kinks. On December 8, 1984, Lisa attended a pre-Christmas party at a friend's house with her 16-year-old boyfriend. She left at approximately 10:15 p.m. to walk the 1.5 miles home with a curfew of 10:30 p.m. Her parents expected her home any minute. Multiple witnesses saw her walking through town that evening, appearing completely normal and safe. She turned into Buck Street at 10:27 p.m., just minutes from home now. She should have walked through her front door within 5 minutes. At approximately 11:55 p.m., her body was discovered in an alleyway between Newlands Road and Rugby Road. The location was just 200 yards from her home on Bonnywell Road. She was almost there. She could probably see her street from where she was found. The coroner concluded the perpetrator may not have intended to actually take her life, suggesting an accidental outcome during an attack. Lisa had asthma, which may have contributed to her vulnerability when someone restricted her breathing. Bruising on her face indicated she was struck at least once. Scratches on her neck showed she fought desperately for her life. What made investigators believe they were dealing with a serial attacker? 3 incidents occurred within a 1-mile radius in the months preceding Lisa's case. All victims described the same attacker. Approximately 20 years old, baby-faced, good-looking, wearing jogging gear, speaking with a local accent. In one incident, he told the victim he couldn't get a girlfriend. This statement suggested someone frustrated with rejection, possibly socially awkward, despite being physically attractive. Third incident occurred the night before Lisa was found. A similar incident occurred in May 1985 on Buck Street, the same street where Lisa had last been seen alive. The investigation was extensive. Over 6,000 members of the public were questioned. More than 1,300 homes were canvassed door to door. Nearly 5,000 leads were pursued. DNA profile was obtained, sufficient to identify the suspect if matched to a sample. In 2011, mass DNA swabbing was conducted in Lee and Wigan, testing hundreds of men who fit the age and location profile. The effort failed to identify the perpetrator. The 2005 Crime Watch UK appearance generated 27 new leads, with several callers independently naming the same 2 suspects, but still not enough to make an arrest. On December 8, 2024, the 40th anniversary, Greater Manchester Police launched a fresh appeal with a candlelit vigil retracing Lisa's final route from the party to where she was found. A £50,000 reward remains active for information leading to a conviction. In March 2025, BBC Crime Watch Live broadcast Every Parent's Nightmare documentary about Lisa's case, bringing renewed attention decades later. Cold Case Unit Head Martin Bottomley stated they only need the perpetrator's name to confirm identity through the DNA profile they have on file. Lisa's mother, Christine Hessian, passed away in January 2016, aged 69, never knowing who took her only offspring from her on a December night 40 years ago. Her father is still alive, still waiting for answers that may never come. Someone in Lee knows who that baby-faced man in jogging gear was. Someone knows who couldn't get a girlfriend and took his frustrations out on women walking alone. Someone knows why Lisa Hessian died 200 yards from safety. While Lisa's case involves a local predator, the next series of attacks terrorized an entire town across 2 states. Texarkana Moonlight Murders. Between February 22nd and May 3rd, 1946, an unidentified attacker terrorized the twin cities of Texarkana, striking 8 people and ending 5 lives. The cities straddle the Texas-Arkansas border, and the perpetrator moved between states freely. The Texas Department of Public Safety calls this the #1 unsolved case in Texas history. The first attack occurred February 22nd. Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry were parked when someone approached wearing a white cloth mask with holes cut for eyes. Hollis suffered 2 skull fractures from being struck with a pistol. Larry was harmed with the weapon. Both survived to describe their attacker's distinctive mask. On March 24th, Richard L. Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found deceased in their car. Both had been struck by a .32 caliber weapon. Blood-soaked earth outside the vehicle indicated they were harmed outside and then placed back inside, staging the scene. April 13th and 14th brought the case of Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. Martin was struck 4 times. Booker, a popular high school junior and former Little Miss Texarkana, was struck twice. Their bodies were found nearly 2 miles apart. Booker's saxophone went missing and wasn't found for 7 months. The final attack on May 3rd targeted Virgil Starks and his wife Katie. Virgil was struck twice in the head through a closed window while reading his newspaper in his own living room. Katie was struck twice in the face while trying to call police but survived. This attack deviated from the pattern, an older married couple at home rather than young people parked, and a .22 rifle was used instead of the .32 pistol from previous incidents. The town descended into panic. Stores sold out of weapons, ammunition, locks, and window shades. Residents nailed sheets over windows, slept with loaded weapons next to their beds, and rigged makeshift alarm systems. Citizens made the town genuinely dangerous. Police had to announce themselves with sirens to avoid being targeted by frightened residents. The Texarkana Gazette coined the name Phantom Killer on April 16, 1946. UL Lee Swinney became the prime suspect. He was a 29-year-old career lawbreaker and Baptist minister's son with an extensive record. Trooper Max Tackett noticed a pattern. A car was taken before each event, then abandoned afterward. In June 1946, Tackett traced a taken vehicle to Swinney's wife Peggy. Upon arrest, Swinney asked, "Mr. Johnson, what do you think they'll do to me for this? Will they give me the chair?" A strange question for someone arrested for car theft, suggesting he thought he'd been caught for something far more serious. Peggy Swinney gave a detailed confession that her husband was the Phantom Killer, specifically implicating him in the Booker Martin case. She knew details only the perpetrator would know, including the exact location where Betty Jo Booker's belongings had been disposed. But she later recanted, and under 1946 law, a spouse could not be compelled to testify. Swinney was convicted of car theft as a habitual offender and sentenced to life. He was released in 1973 or 74 after his conviction was overturned. He passed away of lung cancer in 1994, never charged with the Phantom cases. Both investigators Tackett and Johnson believed until their own passings that Swinney was guilty. The 1976 film, The Town That Dreaded Sundown, dramatized these events. Director Charles B. Pierce was a Texarkana native who remembered the fear from his youth. The killer's sack mask inspired Jason's mask in Friday the 13th Part 2. Annual Halloween screenings have been held at Spring Lake Park since 2003, keeping the mystery alive in popular culture. In February 2020, the FBI released over 1,000 pages of archival documents at vault.fbi.gov, making the investigation files public for the first time. The case remains officially open, but essentially inactive. All key investigators and the prime suspect are deceased. No modern forensic reviews have been conducted on the 80-year-old evidence. While the Phantom terrorized lovers' lanes in the 1940s, the next case occurred 50 years later and created a legacy that saves lives today. Amber Hagerman. Amber Renee Hagerman was a third grader at Berry Elementary School in Arlington, Texas. She loved writing, Barbies, and Disney's Pocahontas. She was described as innocent and sweet, and acted like a little mommy to her 5-year-old brother, Ricky. On Saturday, January 13th, 1996, it was a warm afternoon, perfect weather for playing outside. Amber and Ricky were riding bikes near their grandmother's house in East Arlington. At approximately 3:15 to 3:20 p.m., Ricky got scared of being in trouble and started riding home. Amber stayed behind in the parking lot of an abandoned Winn-Dixie grocery store at 1600 East Abrams Street. Jimmy Kevill, a 78-year-old retired Navy veteran and former deputy, was in his backyard which overlooked the parking lot. He witnessed the abduction and later told police, "I saw this black pickup." He pulled up, jumped out, and grabbed her. When she screamed, I figured the police ought to know about. Amber screamed and kicked as she was forced into a black 1980s to 90s full-size pickup truck. The kidnapper drove west on Abrams Street. The entire abduction took less than 1 minute. Her pink bicycle was found abandoned in the parking lot where she'd been taken. On January 17th, 1996, 4 days later, a man walking his dog found Amber's body in a creek behind Forest Hill Apartments in North Arlington, approximately 4 to 5 miles from the abduction site. She had been kept alive for at least 2 days before her throat was cut. A thunderstorm the night before had washed away significant forensic evidence. More than 50 police officers and FBI agents worked the case initially. Over 7,000 tips have been investigated over nearly 30 years, more than any other cold case in Arlington PD history. The case has never gone 180 days without receiving a new tip, keeping it perpetually active. In January 2021, the 25th anniversary, police confirmed for the first time that DNA evidence exists and has been preserved. They continue consulting with crime labs about advanced forensic technology that might extract more information from the samples. Suspect description: white or Hispanic male, 20s to 30s in 1996, would now be in his 50s to 60s, under 6 feet tall, medium build, brown or black hair. But Amber's legacy extends far beyond the tragedy of her case. 2 weeks after the abduction, Fort Worth massage therapist Diana Simone contacted radio station KDM. "If we have weather and civil defense warnings, why not have alerts for abducted children?" Working with Arlington Police spokesman Dee Anderson, she developed the Amber Plan. The system was established in Dallas-Fort Worth in 1997. In 1998, the first successful rescue occurred. An 8-week-old baby recovered 15 minutes after the alert was issued. In 2003, President George W. Bush signed Amber Alert into federal law. By 2005, Hawaii became the 50th state to implement the system, making it nationwide. As of late 2024, over 1,268 individuals have been safely recovered specifically because of Amber Alerts. The system is now operational in 33+ countries worldwide. Every time that alert sounds on a phone, Amber Hagerman's name reaches millions. On January 13th, 2026, the 30th anniversary, Arlington Police renewed their appeal. January 13th is now recognized as National Amber Alert Awareness Day. Detective Grant Gilden continues pursuing advanced DNA testing, and the $10,000 reward remains active. Key witness Jimmy Kevill passed away in May 2016, taking his eyewitness account to the grave. But someone knows who drove that black pickup truck. Someone knows who took Amber from that parking lot. Someone knows the truth about those 4 days before she was found. If you've made it this far and enjoy deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. While Amber's abduction was witnessed in broad daylight, the next victim vanished while simply walking home. Kathy Moulton. Kathy Marie Moulton was a 16-year-old junior at Deering High School in Portland, Maine. She was the eldest of 3 daughters, known for being quiet, kind-hearted, and easily trusting. She helped elderly neighbors, loved making clothes, wrote poetry, and enjoyed dancing at 7-Eleven club dances. She stood 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighed 98 pounds, had light brown hair and blue eyes, and wore braces, along with thick glasses with dark frames. On September 24, 1971, Kathy's father, Lyman, dropped her at Cumberland Avenue around 1:15 p.m. to run errands in downtown Portland. She purchased pantyhose and toothpaste at Porteous, Mitchell, and Braun department store. She was last seen around 5:30 p.m. leaving Starbird Music Store on Forest Avenue after visiting a friend who worked there. She was carrying a brown leather Mexican clutch purse containing her house key, 2 tubes of toothpaste, and small change of billet. Not even enough for bus fare home. She told her friend she was walking the 1.5 miles home and would see her at that evening's YWCA dance. She never arrived home. Her parents reported her missing when she didn't return for dinner. What investigators pieced together tells a disturbing story. Witnesses saw Kathy getting into a blue car, a stolen 1963 Cadillac, with 2 older males. One was described as her older boyfriend, Lester Everett. The other was Ronald Reed Purley, a Canadian national in his 20s. Everett was driving Purley to the Tobique Reserve, which is the Maliseet-Tobique First Nations reservation near Perth Andover, New Brunswick, Canada. At a Fort Fairfield garage where they stopped, an employee saw all 3 and noticed Purley walking her to and from the bathroom with his hand on the back of her neck. A controlling gesture that suggested she wasn't there willingly. At McBride's farm in the Mars Hill area, Kathy and Lester worked harvesting potatoes alongside other seasonal workers. A teenage co-worker befriended Kathy, who was using the name Candy instead of her real name. The co-worker noticed Kathy cried often, seemed fearful, and repeatedly said she wanted to go home. One night, Everett and Kathy left the farm together. Everett returned alone the next morning, claiming he'd dropped her off at another camp. In reality, investigators believe he had brought her back across the Canadian border to Tobique Reserve and left her with Purley. That was the last time anyone outside that circle saw or heard from Kathy Moulton. Ronald Reed Purley is the primary suspect. He has served prison time for serious offenses against women and home invasion. He has refused to cooperate with police, even when offered immunity in exchange for information about Kathy's whereabouts or what happened to her. Investigators believe Kathy passed away on Tobique Reserve sometime before Thanksgiving, 1971. In 1973, Everett attempted to return to the reservation with a friend to find out what happened to Kathy. They were attacked by Purley family members and threatened with ending if they returned. The violence of that response suggests they were protecting a terrible secret. Everett himself passed away of cancer in the mid-1980s at 35 years old, never having revealed what happened to Kathy. His wife stated he never mentioned Kathy Moulton's name during their years together, keeping whatever he knew locked inside until he was gone. On September 24, 2025, the 54th anniversary, Portland police renewed their appeal for information about Kathy's disappearance. Kathy's distinctive dental records, she'd had 4 eye teeth removed for braces, have been used to eliminate her as a match to hundreds of unidentified female bodies discovered in the United States and Canada over the past 5 decades. Her mother, Claire, is still alive, waiting for answers, after more than half a century. Her father Lyman passed away in 2017 without resolution, never knowing what happened after he dropped his daughter off that September afternoon. The family kept the same phone number for years and never locked the front door, hoping against hope that Kathy would somehow return home. Ronald Reed Purley knows what happened. He's refused to tell anyone for over 50 years, even when offered complete immunity from prosecution. Whatever happened on that reservation in 1971, he's determined to take it to his grave rather than give Kathy's family the closure they desperately need. While Kathy's disappearance involved clear suspects who won't talk, the next case features a woman who vanished with barely a trace. Vicki Lee Lamberton. Vicki Lee Lamberton was 24 years old, born October 30th, 1949, as Vicki Lee Lockwood. She was a native of Harper, Kansas, though she told people she was from Colorado. She held a bachelor's degree from Clark University and was pursuing a master's in psychology at Assumption College in Worcester, Massachusetts. She was married to Lowell Lamberton, but had separated approximately 6 weeks before she vanished. The circumstances of her disappearance are deeply suspicious. After separating from her husband, Vicki stored her belongings in the garage of Dr. Roger Barker, a married psychology professor at Assumption College where she was studying. Family members suspected Vicki was having an affair with Barker, which would explain why he was storing all her possessions. Dr. Barker had accompanied Vicki to New York City when she applied for a doctorate program at Columbia University. An unusual level of involvement for a professor with a student, suggesting their relationship went beyond academic mentorship. Vicki's husband and brother saw her with Barker at a Worcester shopping mall shortly before she disappeared, confirming they were spending time together publicly. In February 1974, Vicki called her estranged husband to discuss possible reconciliation. She told him she would see him after returning from a weekend trip to Maine with a girlfriend. That same night, she called a friend and revealed something completely different. She said she was actually going to Colorado with Dr. Barker and mentioned possible future marriage plans between them. She was never seen or heard from again after those phone calls. The friend she claimed was going to Maine stated she had not spoken to Vicki recently and no trip was planned. This lie suggests Vicki was hiding her true plans from her husband while confiding them to a trusted friend. Assumption College staff confirmed Barker was in Vail, Colorado on a ski trip during this time, hospitalized with pneumonia for 2 weeks. So he was definitely in Colorado when Vicki disappeared. But was she with him? Did she ever make it to Colorado? Or did something happen to her before she left Massachusetts? When confronted by Vicki's husband in March 1974, Barker claimed he did not know Vicki well, a statement that strains credibility given that he was storing all her belongings in his garage, had traveled to New York with her for graduate school applications, and had been seen with her multiple times around Worcester. An anonymous call to her family's Kansas home claimed Vicki had gone to Europe. But police found no evidence of international travel, no passport stamps, no airline tickets, no credit card charges in Europe. Her social security number has never been used since 1974, strongly suggesting she didn't start a new life elsewhere under her own identity. The most shocking aspect of this case is the delayed response. No missing person report was filed until 2010, 36 years after she disappeared, when family finally contacted Worcester police. For more than 3 decades, Vicki Lamberton simply dropped off the radar, and no one reported it to authorities. Why the delay? Her husband may have believed she'd left him for Barker and started a new life. Her family in Kansas may have thought she was pursuing her doctorate somewhere and would reach out when ready. Each person who cared about her may have assumed someone else knew where she was. By the time anyone realized no one had heard from her in decades, the trail was ice cold. a DNA profile exists in Namas under case number MP4933, waiting to be matched if remains are ever discovered and tested. The year 2024 marked the 50th anniversary of her disappearance. Dr. Barker was reportedly still alive as of 2012, but has never been officially named as a suspect in her disappearance. Did Vicky make it to Colorado and something happened there? Did she never leave Massachusetts? Did her relationship with Barker turn dangerous when she mentioned marriage plans that he never intended to fulfill? Or did someone else entirely intercept her before she could leave for Colorado? The answers died with the decades of silence. Vicky Lamberton vanished in 1974, and by the time anyone looked for her, she'd been gone longer than she'd been alive. While Vicky's case involves a possible inappropriate relationship, the next disappearance occurred at one of America's most prestigious institutions. Richard Colvin Cox. Richard Colvin Cox was 21 years old, born July 25, 1928. He was a West Point cadet from Mansfield, Ohio, the youngest of 6 offspring raised in a Christian Scientist family. Before West Point, he served in the U.S. Army Constabulary in Allied-occupied Germany, attaining the rank of sergeant and working in intelligence. He was engaged to Betty Timmons and planned to marry after graduation. On Saturday, January 7, 1950, a man called the B-2 barracks asking for Cox in a rough and patronizing, almost insulting tone. He left a message. "Just tell him George called. He'll know who I am. We knew each other in Germany." That evening, Cox greeted the visitor warmly and signed out for dinner at Thayer Hotel. Instead of dining at the hotel, they sat in George's car drinking whiskey for hours. Cox returned to barracks intoxicated and fell asleep at his desk. When he woke suddenly at lights out, he ran into the hallway, shouting, "Alice, who's down there?" He never explained who Alice was or why he was calling that name. The next day, Cox told roommates the man was a former Army Ranger who bragged about ending Germans, cutting off their private parts, and taking the life of a German girl he'd gotten pregnant. Cox said the man was capable of anything and hoped he wouldn't see him again. The description suggested someone dangerous, possibly unstable, definitely disturbed. On January 14, 1950, Cox attended an Army basketball game. He was seen talking to George afterward. That evening, appearing not apprehensive, just sort of disgusted, he told his roommate he was signing out to dine with his visitor again. At approximately 6 p.m., Cox was last seen walking across the drill field toward Thayer Hotel with the man. He left behind $87 in cash, 2 suits of civilian clothes, his prized gold watch, and an uncashed check. His calendar had January 15th circled with no explanation. He was supposed to return by 11 p.m., but never did. A West Point cadet simply vanishing into thin air was unprecedented. The massive manhunt included helicopter and ground searches, draining nearby Delafield Pond and dragging the Hudson River. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover personally directed agents to give this case close attention. The disappearance of a military intelligence veteran from the nation's premier military academy raised serious concerns about what might have happened. The leading theory involves CIA recruitment. Cox was unhappy at West Point, expressing this in letters to family. He had intelligence experience from Germany and was studying Russian, valuable skills for intelligence work during the early Cold War. George, possibly David M. Westervelt, who served with Cox in Germany, may have offered him a way out of West Point and into intelligence work. A retired CIA official allegedly told researcher Marshall Jacobs that Cox became part of a stay-behind team in Europe, spent his career smuggling nuclear scientists out of the Soviet bloc, and retired to northern Idaho. This would explain why he left everything behind. He was starting a completely new life with a new identity. But there are holes in that theory. 165 pages of FBI files are missing, and remaining documents are heavily redacted. What are they hiding? If Cox voluntarily joined intelligence services, why the secrecy 75 years later? There were sightings. In 1952 in Washington, D.C., Ernest Shotwell, who knew Cox from West Point Prep School, encountered him at a Greyhound bus station. Cox claimed to have resigned from West Point and was moving to Germany. He appeared uncomfortable and left after only 5 minutes, cutting the conversation short. A 1950 sighting in Mansfield, Ohio, wasn't revealed until 2021 when high school classmate Ursula Unterwagner saw Cox walking along railroad tracks within a week of his disappearance. She kept this secret until her passing in 2020, fearing she might jeopardize his life or career if he was indeed in intelligence work. Ohio declared Cox legally deceased on January 14, 1957, exactly 7 years after his disappearance. He remains the only cadet in West Point history to have disappeared and never been found. If alive, he would be 97 years old. Did Richard Cox voluntarily disappear into intelligence work? Was he taken against his will by someone dangerous? Or did George have more sinister intentions that January night? The truth remains classified or lost to time. While Cox's disappearance might involve government secrets, the next case occurred in a city where being different could be deadly. Charles Self. Charles Charlie Self was 32 years old, born February 14, 1949. He was a set designer for RTE, the Irish national broadcaster, previously working with BBC. Born in England and raised in Glasgow after his mother passed away when he was young, he moved to Dublin in 1978 and became the main set designer for The Late Late Show. He shared a home with famous Irish DJ Vincent Hanley and was described as witty, bubbly, generous, known for wearing bright, vivid colors that reflected his personality. On January 20th and 21st, 1982, Charles spent his last evening pub hopping through Dublin's nightlife. He visited the Bailey, South William Pub, and finally Bartley Dunn's, a well-known establishment that was friendly to the gay community at a time when such places were rare in Catholic Ireland. At 11:40 p.m., he entered Hot Pot Cafe on Burgh Quay for takeaway food. At 12:20 a.m., he got into a taxi with a fair-haired man in a two-piece suit. The taxi driver later reported the two were amorous in the back seat, suggesting they were romantically involved or heading somewhere together. They were dropped at Annesley Mews, Monkstown, at 12:40 a.m., at the home Charles shared with Vincent Hanley. What happened next is where the story becomes deeply troubling. Housemate Bertram "Bertie" Tyrer, who was staying in Vincent Hanley's room while Hanley was in London, reported being woken at 2:30 a.m. A man entered his room, apologized, saying he was in the wrong room, and left. This man had curly dark hair and a West Brit accent, a distinctive Irish accent associated with upper-class Dublin. But this description doesn't match the blonde man from the taxi at all. So who was this dark-haired intruder? Had the blonde man already left? Had he let someone else into the house? Or was there a third person involved that no one has ever identified? At 8:45 a.m., Tyrer found Charles at the bottom of the stairs in a pool of blood, partly slumped against the front door. He had been struck 14 times, some wounds going completely through his body, suffered 3 slash wounds to the throat, and had part of a red dressing gown cord wrapped tightly around his neck. The attack was prolonged, brutal, and personal. The phone line had been disabled, cutting off any chance of calling for help. The body was blocking the front door, suggesting the perpetrator couldn't exit that way. Another neighbor heard a stone bench being dragged at 4 a.m. and saw a man climbing over the wall to escape, hours after Charles was already deceased. The investigation was controversial from the start. Homosexuality was illegal in Ireland until 1993, 11 years after Charles's ending. The Gardaí interviewed approximately 1,500 gay men as part of the investigation. Many of these men were not out to their families, their employers, or their communities. Reports emerged of intimidation and harassment during questioning. Many gay men were effectively outed through the investigation process, with devastating consequences. Some fled Ireland entirely. Each of the 1,500 men interviewed had a Garda file opened on them. These files have never been returned to the individuals or destroyed. Tyrer made a sketch of the dark-haired intruder who entered his room, but Gardaí have given conflicting statements about whether they still have it. The sketch has never been released to the public, despite it potentially being the only visual representation of someone who was in the house when Charles was ended. Along with another incident in September 1982, Charles Self's case and the investigation's tactics galvanized Ireland's LGBT community. Gay rights activist Cathal Kerrigan stated, "You could say it all started with Charles Self's case when we started fighting back against the Gardaí. This contributed to momentum, leading to Dublin's first Pride Parade in 1983. A 2008 cold case review concluded the scene may have been staged by the perpetrator. The case remains open. Someone knows who the blonde man in the taxi was. Someone knows who the dark-haired intruder was. While Charles's ending occurred during a night out, the next person vanished during a routine morning walk in his own neighborhood. Jason Jolkowski. Jason Anthony. Jolkowski was 19 years old, born June 24, 1981. He was a graduate of Omaha Benson High School and part-time student at Iowa Western Community College in a radio broadcasting program. He dreamed of becoming a radio DJ and worked part-time at Fazoli's restaurant. Described as shy, intelligent, kind, and close to family, he had learning disabilities related to speech that may have made him appear different to strangers, though he was actually above average intelligence. On June 13, 2001, at approximately 10 to 10:30 a.m., Jason's boss called asking him to come to work early. His car was at a repair shop, so he arranged for a female coworker to pick him up at Benson High School, 8 blocks, about half a mile from his home. Meeting time, 11 a.m. At 10:45 a.m., neighbor Chester Link saw Jason helping his younger brother Michael take trash cans from the curb to the garage. Michael also saw Jason walking toward the high school from a window inside their home. Everything appeared completely normal. Jason was doing a household chore before leaving for work. Jason never arrived at Benson High School. Security cameras at the school confirmed he never reached campus. He never showed up at Fazoli's for his shift. He was never seen or heard from again. The walk should have taken 10 to 15 minutes maximum through quiet residential streets. The evidence of non-voluntary disappearance is overwhelming. He had $650 in his bank account that was never touched. His cell phone showed no activity since the disappearance. His ATM card was never used. His car was left at the repair shop. His last paychecks were never cashed. He had a new job starting 1 week later that he never showed up for. All his personal items remained in his room. A police officer called it the most baffling case he had seen in 30 years of law enforcement work. How does someone vanish completely in broad daylight during a 10-minute walk through a residential neighborhood? There were no witnesses, No signs of struggle. No screams. Nothing. In October 2003, Jason's parents, Jim Jolkowski and Kelly Murphy, founded Project Jason, a 501c3 nonprofit organization assisting families of missing persons. They have distributed approximately 50,000 missing person flyers and advocated for Jason's Law, which passed in Nebraska in 2005, creating a statewide missing persons clearinghouse. Kelly Murphy has received the 2010 Volunteer for Victims Award from U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder and the 2014 Nebraska Governor's Points of Light Award for her advocacy work. The case remains open and active with Omaha Police Department and is listed with the FBI. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has created age progression photos showing what Jason would look like at 44 years old as of June 2025. Someone living in that Omaha neighborhood knows something. Someone saw Jason that morning. Someone knows where he is. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.